Shu looked back upon the whitewashed walls of his cliff-coddled village for what he felt was the last time. Little comfort came from the painted spire of his elven lord, nor the weight of the maul slung over his bruising shoulder. Their lord had tasked them with destroying the ancient ruins which had emerged from the primordial glaciation, another elven defiance of those who came before. Flickering flames of evening torches had yet to be dismissed by the coming dawn. Shu was just another levy in a procession of men, wielding tusk picks and stone mallets, entering the gloaming mountainside. Wide braziers of charred logs and wilting hay cast the now closing gates in an ominous shadow, and highlighted the intricate motif carved into the bone mask that now crowned its arcing keystone. Its warning peered with empty sockets towards their destination. That mask, claimed from the pillaged corpse of a mountain folk sentinel, concluded the whispers of dark specters for a time. The wraith was made manifest as once living flesh and sinew, while its troll-hide vestments now warmed the village champion's shoulders. As the old glaciers melted and revealed more of the strange black stones, however, rumors returned from mammoth shepherds that black shadows dwelled where ice thawed to unveil sleek dark monuments, the height of 5 great elven lords. Worse still, shepherds disappeared while standing vigil over their herds, but their flocks remained unscathed by the silent hunters. Despite assurances of Urzum hunts or saber-cat stalkings, the hearths grew paranoid with stories of ghosts, and the elven lord grew impatient with the pestilence of his human subjects. Shu had seen the monuments, still caked in dirt and polished clean at their bases by the flowing rivers of glacial runoff. He had wielded a puny stone mace as the levy leader, in a gleaming chess-piece, guided his small band through the same narrow pass they now marched. Shu shifted his mallet off one sore shoulder and onto the other as his mind itched with a memory of his last march here. The levy leader, Lumashe, no longer headed the march. Lumashe had been slain by the unseen slingstone of the sentinel, which lodged deep into his skull and could only be pried free by the careful ministrations of the funerary priest. 4 more fell to sword and stone before Yumafi, the village champion, had planted a javelin first into the outlander's shield, and then his neck. Now Yumafi was levy leader, and his predecessor's bronze chess-piece was concealed beneath a fine cloak of pillaged troll hide. He had also carried back the engraved skull mask of the sentinel, which now hung above the village gate, and his head preserved in linseed oil, so his successor's mask could not be fashioned by the sentinel's tribe. A great rain followed, and the levies celebrated and mourned with the rare solace of beer straws and mammoth meat. That was a week ago now. The speed with which the rumors returned had been strange to those who knew the dogmatic traditions of the mountain folk. A new sentinel without sky burial for the soul of the last reeked of misfortune, a chance not often taken by the superstitious barbarian tribes. The levies gossiped amongst themselves. Perhaps the tribes were angered by such blatant aggression. Why haven't the war bands yet come for our herds? While the Lord had chided them not to concern their simple minds with the simpler savages, through his human envoy. Regardless, the pale spire of their Lord was long out of sight now, and the rising sun broke over the pale mountains to assuage the paranoia of silent trekking. Shu tousled his thick mammoth fur coat and noted the landmark scars of quartz veins in the familiar stone. We are close, he thought. Yumafi smiled over his shoulder and assured his men the rumors were only tall tales of inbred herdsmen, which replaced the herdsman's son's worry with good-natured annoyance. The ever-narrowing ravine filled with laughter and lewd remarks about the squatting hieroglyphs adorning the passage. They worshipped the god of defecation and sacrificed to the hole they shit in, the men taunted into the echoing rain-slick walls of the mountain pass. The pompous levies acted as decadent as the King of Kings himself, but their uproar deafened them to the vacuum of silent bells. Yumafi first breached the narrow ravine and entered the clearing which had once been glutted by a towering glacial peak. He marched, shield raised, to the first cyclopean monolith. His dark eyes scanned the mountaintop, eager not to repeat Lumashe's mistakes. When he was satisfied, he turned those dark eyes to the newly exposed onyx pillars. They were no longer caked with a coat of dull sable muck, but had been washed clean by the week of heavy rain. Slick black obsidian glistened like polished glass in the morning sun. Unnaturally geometric angles jutted from the earth in a man-dwarfing ring. Kashu was the first to notice the ring was no longer girded with the primitive barrier of twine placed by the sentinel. It was scattered limply across the fresh mud. Red ribbons were stained brown, and the copper bells were clogged with a thick gunk that silenced their warding chime. The laughing host approached the great stones, and hoisted their mammoth tusk picks and heavy stone mauls. They set about their true task, beating at the towering stones with tools that seemed much more brutish than the idols they desecrated. The levies battered at the smooth surface without relent, but failed to so much as chip the alien stones. Umafi himself wrenched them all from Kashu, but his frenzied swings resulted only in the stone head of the hammer breaking free from the wooden haft and nearly bludgeoning an adjacent man as it flew. Abandoning his tool with little grievance, Kashu paced the circle and into the great rectangular gateway of the central monolith. It towered higher than any gateway he had seen in his life, and Kashu imagined rivaled the great gates of Huria. He swore he could hear a gentle hum from the stones, but strained to make out the noise over Umafi's outraged tantrum. Kashu stood within the frame and pressed his ear to the cool black stone. It did not burn his cheek like the frigid ice that bore it, but kissed his skin with a dull, soothing cold. He heard a resonating hum like the echoes of a fleeting lyre string, but it began to grow into the distant ballads that drifted from his elven lord's high perch. His eyes widened as he heard the ballad grow louder still. The stone purred with unknown energy. A steady rising brewed within the slick monoliths until it grew loud enough for him to hear without pressing his ear flat against the surface. The others, too, stepped back with nervous bewilderment. Some reached for bronze daggers stowed in their belts, while others raised the ungainly tools in defense. Kashu stumbled back from where he stood, at the center of the central arch. At the centermost point, the sound reached a strange, hissing melody, like wind whistling through a round stone. The breeze picked up, and the sun's warmth was painted over by a patchwork of dark clouds. Men's hats were whisked over the cliffside in the gusts of lashing wind, and those wielding heavy tools struggled to stay afoot. Blocking the narrow corridor from which they came grew a looming shadow, which the men wheeled to face. The figure's silhouette appeared horned or crowned by a wide helm. As it approached, the stones only cried louder. The ground rumbled with thunderous reverberation, trembling beneath the levy's feet. Umafi cast a javelin, but only the dull clang of bronze on stone echoed from the pass. Men screamed, and with them the stones now wailed like the lamenting head of the martyred King of Kings. The shadow breached the ravine like a black sun rising on the horizon, and Kashu's vision swam in a spiral of dizzying illusion. Blood trickled from his ears as he stood in the pinnacle of the yawning gateway. Kashu scarcely interpreted the form of a black-robed figure grasping an orb of onyx stone before his head grew light, and he fell backward into the damp embrace of the mud, crumbling the discarded copper bells as he toppled. He knew then they never should have interfered with the sentinel. A trembling palm reached for his forehead, but he was soon lulled back into the darkness he had just emerged from. Wrapped in the blanket-like warmth of his jacket, Kashu swaddled himself in the cold grasp of the wet ground. His world was haloed by a swimming darkness, and the sun was eaten by the maw of night.